Hello everyone, this is Shannon for Waffle Flower Crafts. In this video, we're going to do some no-line watercoloring with Tombow dual brush pens using the new Bouquet Builder 6 stamp set from Waffle Flower. This is the Bouquet Builder 6 stamp set. As you can see, you get some really big, beautiful flowers. I picked out 5 images from that set and I mounted them in my MISTI, and now I'm going to ink them up with antique linen distress ink, stamp them onto some Bristol paper. Bristol paper is the key here. It works really well with Tombow dual brush pens when you do watercoloring. I'm going to stamp this a couple times to make sure it's nice and bold and I can see those images because antique linen is a pretty light colored ink. Now that I have all my images stamped, it's time to start coloring. I'm going to start with the Tombow dual brush pen direct to paper. My colors I'm using are on screen. This is 379, and I'm going to color about a quarter of the leaf with this really kind of teal green. After I've colored some of that ink onto the paper, I'm going to take my brush, pick up a small amount of water. I have water sprayed down onto my water media mat, and that water is going to activate that ink, and I'm going to start to spread it over the leaf a little bit. And I do clean my brush here a little bit because I want a gradation, so if I clean my brush a little bit, I won't have that same intensity of hue spread across. They'll start to lighten up a little bit. Now off camera, or off screen rather, I have 126 scribbled onto my mat, and I'm picking it up and coloring the last half with that kind of brighter limer kind of green. I'm now going to repeat this process for all my leaves. I'm going to do this other big leaf here because you can see you can really see the process here. I even will scribble down some of my teal color here, and I'll use that to pick up to create the stems. I have a very, very thin brush here to help me paint the stems. Sometimes I can use my my marker itself to draw in the stems, but here that stem was very, very thin. And I'm just repeating the process for these leaves up here, painting with the teal first and then finishing up the half with that kind of limer green. I went ahead and repeated the process for the rest of the leaves. It's just a very repetitive process. Now moving on to all the remaining leaves that I didn't already color with that 2 green combo. These leaves I'm going to only use a single green, which is 312. And again, I'm going to go direct to paper, take that marker, draw out the stem, then color a little bit at the base of the leaf, and then take my damp brush and activate that ink and spread that ink across the leaf to get a nice gradation. And this is a very light color, so I do scribble some of this onto the mat and pick it up from time to time to kind of to create a smoother gradation. Now I'm moving on to one of the flowers. So for this flower, I have 2 colors picked out. I'm starting with 676, which is kind of a darker plumber purple, and I spread that out over the petal. Here I'm starting with it direct to paper, spreading it out, and then I move to this much more fuchsia color and finish up the bottom half of the petal. I even kind of spread that fuchsia all the way to the base of the petal. So this is a very similar process to how I colored the leaf, starting with my darker color at the base, kind of blending it out with a damp brush. And then I move on to my lighter color, which in this case is a kind of a fuchsia color, and I spread that out. I'm really only using the fuchsia color here because I didn't really like the dullness of the kind of plum color that I started with. So this fuchsia color livens it up a little bit and makes it a little bit more interesting. So I'm just finished up that flower. Now moving to the center. I just have 2 oranges picked out. Started with my lightest orange, which is 933, colored basically the whole center, and then finished up with my darker orange, which was 946. Now moving on to this red flower. I'm actually going to only use 1 color for this red flower, which is this beautiful red 856. And again, starting at the base of the petal, starting direct to paper with my marker, then taking my damp brush and spreading out that ink. And again, it is important to kind of stop every once in a while and clean your brush a little bit with some clean water and then kind of dry it, because you don't want to have your brush full of all that water, and continue to spread out the ink. That way you get more of a gradation, because these colors are pretty intense, and if you don't clean out, you'll basically have a flat petal or a flat leaf. So you definitely need to clean your brush frequently to create that nice gradation. So I'm almost done here, finishing up a couple petals on this pretty flower. I think this must be like, it looks similar to like a lotus, but I really like the shape of the leaves in this flower. This is a really fun one to color. You really get to create that look of roundness pretty easily. So I just finished up that red color. Now moving on to this daisy-like flower. Again, just one color picked out, 946, and then exact same process as before, starting at the base with my marker direct to the paper and then blending out with the damp brush. For the center here, I have a orange and a brown. Started with the orange first, colored in the center, and now I'm using the brown here to kind of add some shape and some variation to that center. And I think the brown works really well for this flower. Now I only have these last little flowers to do. I have a really kind of bright, vibrant purple picked out, and again starting at the base with my dark purple and then blending it out. So a pretty similar process for each one of these flowers, except for the first one, which I did use 2 markers to color the first flower, but it's pretty simple, a little bit of time consuming, but I really think that it has some really pretty results. Now I'm going to just finish the center really quickly with a yellow and an orange, and then I just repeated the process off camera here for the rest of my flowers. And for this last purple one, again, I'll finish with my yellow and then a little bit of orange, just to kind of add a little shadow to that center and make it a little bit more interesting. And my watercoloring is now done. So I went ahead and die cut these images out with the Bouquet Builder 6 matching dies, and now I'm going to create my background. I have 4 Distress Oxides picked out. I'm starting with old paper here and blending basically the bottom quarter with this old paper. Now I'm moving on to Lucky Clover, gonna ink blend the next quarter with that, and then I'll go back over with some old paper and kind of smooth out that transition between the Lucky Clover and the old paper. Now I'm moving on to Peacock Feathers. I'm going to blend the other half with this color. Gonna try to get a nice gradation between the Lucky Clover and the Peacock Feathers. And then I'll finish up with some black soot here. Now this is a really dark color obviously, so I'm going to have to, after I blend that quarter, go back over with some more Peacock Feathers to kind of smooth out that transition between the black soot and the Peacock Feathers. And I love these Distress Oxides because it makes ink blending so easy. So now that I've finished this background, I dried it completely. I actually dried it with my heat tool to make sure it was completely dry. I'm going to stamp my sentiment here, but I put down some anti-static powder first and then inked it up with Versamark ink because I'm going to do some heat embossing. So after I stamp my sentiment, I'm going to grab my gold embossing powder, dip my sentiment into there, tap off the excess, and then just heat set with my tool. This sentiment is from the Sweet Sentiment stamp set that just came out in Waffle Flower's December release. Now I'm going to do some splattering with paint. This is Gansai Tombi white paint here. Just mixed up the paint with some water and just going to do some splatters with my brush to add a little bit of texture and interest to that background. Now that I've let that background completely dry so all my paint splatters are not wet at all anymore, I'm going to grab some Tombow Mono multi-liquid adhesive here, add it to the back side of my paper. And if you're wondering why there's grid lines on the back side of that paper, I'm recycling some paper. This is some kind of misprinted Creative Monthly papers that Waffle Flower makes. It's some really nice quality cardstock, and so I'm just using the other side to make cards with so it doesn't get thrown away or get wasted. So I went ahead and added some foam squares to the back side of my flowers, and now I'm just going to arrange them here on my panel and just kind of adjust and tuck things under to try to get this really nice arrangement and fill up this card front. I'm just going to tuck in this last flower here, and that will actually complete my arrangement. I'm now going to finish this card with some sequins. I have some beautiful iridescent clear sequins here. I use Nouveau crystal drops. This is Morning Dew, so a clear color, as my glue, and I just drop a little bit of that Nouveau crystal drops down onto the card front, and then use a jewel pick to place my sequins, and that will actually finish my card. I'll now hold it to the camera so you can get a good look at these flowers, that background, those splatters, the sequins, all how it came together. I do really love pairing these bold flowers with a strong ink blended background. I think it just really is just a joy of a card, just really vibrant and full of color. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you want any more information on the products I use, please head over to Waffle Flower, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.